Today's scripture comes from the Gospel of Matthew. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all of Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. This is the word of the Lord.
Well, although Christmas was a couple of weeks ago, you see that we're dialing it back to Christmas Eve this morning. And thinking about that, I wonder how many of you have ever set out refreshments for Santa before going to bed on Christmas Eve? How many? Good. Probably milk and cookies. Good. Like the big guy needs more calories. Today is Epiphany. And as you heard in this morning's gospel lectionary reading, the focus is still on the birth of Jesus. Now, in the Eastern world, Greece, Turkey, the Balkans, and the former countries of the Soviet Union, Christians are holding special celebrations today, while many Christians in the West are not even cognizant of the significance of January 6th. I suspect they would be surprised to learn that Christians began celebrating Epiphany more than 100 years before they started celebrating Christmas. But not all Western Christians are unaware of the significance of this day. In Spain and a number of Latin American countries, Epiphany is a major holiday. It's known as Three Kings Day. Magdalena Garcia, who grew up in Cuba, said that when she was a child, her Christmas celebration did not include a visitor from the North Pole. Instead, January 6th was the key day, and that's when they all got excited about the visitation of the three kings. These are the ones who brought the gifts to the children. Just as in our text, they're the ones who brought gifts to Jesus. Now, Garcia says that since these kings came from the east and bearing gifts and traveling in a camel caravan, her holiday preparations included gathering fresh water and grass for the camels. And living in Cuba, they added their own special twist to welcoming the Magi. Her family set out for the kings, not milk and cookies, but cigars. Now, the word epiphany comes from a Greek word that means appearance or revelation. We often use the word epiphany to mean a new insight, an aha moment, when we see something as if we're seeing it for the first time. An epiphany can make a minor impact on us, or it can be a life-changing event. How we see life differently from that day on. Well, the church denotes the day of Epiphany by reading Matthew's story of the Magi being led by the star to Jesus. The story tells of Christ being revealed to the Gentiles, the day when non-Jews had an aha moment. Aha, Jesus is the one we've been searching for. He's the one who will reveal to us the essence of life. Perhaps Epiphany of the Lord Day should be a day for each of us to reflect on our personal spiritual aha moments. Those times when a threshold we had never noticed opened and we were changed. Perhaps it was a moment similar to the one that Scrooge had when he saw for the first time how his greed was destroying his soul, and he chose the liberation of a generous spirit over the shackles of greed. It could be a moment when we realized why others see us as self-absorbed, and from that day on we decided we would talk less and listen more. Or perhaps it was a moment when we became aware of ways that we are unforgiving, or cynical, or controlling, and we decided to embark on a nobler path. Now, the story of the Magi is a well-known part of the Christmas story, despite the fact that it prompts numerous questions. Who are these people who came from the east to the birthplace of Jesus? Most of us are accustomed to thinking of them as kings, thanks to our hymn, "We Three Kings of Orient Are." But the Greek manuscripts upon which our English translations of the Bible are based never mention the word king. The word is magi, and that word means astrologer. And so our English Bibles always translate this as either astrologers or wise men. It's unclear when the church decided that magi had to morph into kings, but nearly every English Bible says they're not kings. The word men is also a bit of a problem. The Greek text doesn't say anything about them being men either. The Magi could have been men or women or some of each. Thus, this morning's solo from a woman as well as the men. Thank you, Sharon. How many Magi were there? Well, we can't really say definitively. There's never a number in the text. We've always said that must be 3 because there were 3 gifts. But of course, many people could have brought the same gift. Then there's the problem of the star. If the Magi spotted this star from miles and miles away that led them to the birth of Jesus, why didn't anybody else see it? Why did Herod gather all of the scribes and chief priests together and say, now where's the Messiah supposed to be born? Why didn't he just look out the window? However, I think we overlook the genius and the inspiration of this gospel writer if we pursue a flat, literal reading of this story. It reveals far more treasures if we decipher its symbols. Herod, a diabolical tyrant, exemplifies darkness and all that's awry with the world. The star is not merely a sign in the sky marking the place of Jesus. It points to a new age in which light will arise that will never be quenched by the darkness. Not only theologians, but philosophers and poets and even politicians employ light as a powerful metaphor. Philosopher Alan Bloom portrayed light as wisdom when he said, education is the movement from darkness to light. Martin Luther King Jr. used light to represent virtue when he said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can drive out darkness. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can drive out hate." Helen Keller, who of course was literally blind, understood light as a very potent symbol for hope. She said, "Faith is the strength by which a shattered world will one day emerge into the light." And of course, light is a very prominent metaphor throughout the Scriptures. The Gospel of John opens by identifying Jesus as the light that shines in the darkness. Then as his gospel unfolds, we see that Jesus is the light that personifies wisdom, virtue, and hope. Jesus even refers to himself as the light of the world. "Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." Matthew's star in today's passage conveys the same sentiment. Jesus is the light of the world who will initiate the spreading of God's reign on earth, where wisdom, virtue, and hope will one day prevail. And what about these gifts that the Magi bestowed on Jesus? Did they really present Jesus with gold? The Scriptures never waver from their depiction of Jesus, Joseph, and Mary as poor. Did the Magi give these precious gifts, or perhaps they gave the most valuable gift of all, themselves? When Jesus was revealed to the Gentiles, some rejected him, but some, represented by the Magi, fell down on their knees and dedicated their lives to him. Giving ourselves to something greater than ourselves is what makes life rich and what brings serenity to our soul. If Matthew's story of the Magi is more than a historical report of an event that occurred at the birth of Jesus, if it is a story for all times, then there's a deeper message for us. When Matthew says the Magi went home by another road, I think he's not talking about a literal path. I think he's talking about a transformation within the Magi. A transformation that prompted them to choose the road that is the antithesis of darkness, the antithesis of evil and ignorance and despair, the road that leads to wisdom and virtue and hope, which is the road of light. Palestinian poet Tara Ali lives under the Israeli occupation. He dreamt of extracting revenge on the man who murdered his father. To that end, he wrote a poem called Revenge. It begins with him imagining himself challenging his father's murderer to a duel. But as he writes about this desire within to even the score, he has an epiphany that transforms him. His poem. "At times, I wish I could meet in a duel the man who killed my father and razed our home, expelling me into a narrow country. And if he killed me, I would rest at last. And if I were ready, I would take my revenge." But if it came to light, when my arrival appeared, that he had a mother waiting for him, or a father who put his right hand over the heart's place in his chest whenever his son was late coming home, even by just a quarter hour, then I would not kill him, even if I could. Likewise, I would not murder him if it were soon made clear that he had a brother or sisters who loved him and constantly longed to see him, or if he had a wife to greet him and children who could not bear his absence, or if he had friends or companions, neighbors he knew, or allies, or people from a hospital room, or classmates from school asking about him and sending him regards. But if he turned out to be on his own, cut off like a branch from a tree, without a father or mother, with neither a brother nor a sister, wifeless, without a child, and without kin or neighbors or friends, colleagues or companions, then I would not add a thing to his pain. Because of such aloneness. Not the torment of death, and not the sorrow of passing away. When we make a deep dive into our spiritual lives, we open ourselves to the possibility of being transformed. The compass of our soul will turn us away from darkness and will guide us toward the light. And like the Magi, we too will discover a different road, one that will carry us to our true home, our home in God.